this movie how we see Ralph kind of start out with a selfish goal for himself. And as he goes through his journey, the thing that we see at the end that brings him the most happiness is ultimately that he reached a place where he was doing something for somebody else. Did y'all catch that in the movie? Did you see that? That's the truth of our faith. So many of us struggle with depression and not feeling like we have a purpose in our life. And it's because we've become inward focused versus outward focused. We forgot that this is how Jesus lived, and it's the life that he would have us live. It's where we find abundant life. And I want to share with you today, in your talk notes, there's a thing that's tucked in there. We've been talking about this all month long. It's called Rewrite. And what Rewrite is, it's a mentoring training event that we're going to have this week. We work with multiple groups here in our community where you can go and impact the life of an at-risk child. We've got some fantastic ways where you can go and make a difference. Ultimately, it just means you give up a little bit of TV time and you give of yourself in a powerful way. But as we've talked about this, it's been difficult to connect you with really the heart behind it, the story of how powerful it can be in the life of a person when you give of yourself as a mentor. So I want to read a story to you today that I think illustrates this. My biological father died in an accident when my mother was pregnant with me. His death left a void in my mom that she tried to fill in countless ways. One way was in an abusive relationship. The man who abused us lived with us for a number of years and introduced her to drugs. It was a rough time in my life. I saw my mother raped, beaten, even once while we were trying to escape his abuse. He ran us off the road with his truck and caused our car to flip multiple times. But my mom always ran back to him. She couldn't leave. Eventually, I picked up their lifestyle. The only way I could see to escape the abuse and the hardship of my young life was with a bottle of alcohol or with cocaine. I had so much anger in my heart, so much emptiness. I had no ambition and could care less what happened to me. This was my life. That's the first chapter. I want to introduce you to the second chapter of this story. His name is Danny Duran. He's our associate campus pastor, if you haven't met him.
Now, everything that the first chapter of my story told said that I'm supposed to be a man up here that is an abusive father, an abusive husband, dead or in prison, but definitely addicted to drugs and alcohol. And by the grace of God, I stand before you in a second chapter of my life, a pastor. By God's grace, a pastor who has an amazing wife, a healthy marriage, and 3 wonderful children. And let me tell you, it wasn't some crazy thing that kind of changed me. You know what it was? It was a man that saw me at church one weekend and saw that I was broken and saw that he could help. And you want to know how he helped? He invited me to go with him to a monster truck rally. I was very poor. I'd never been to one of those, so I went with him. And he began to spend time with me. But the biggest thing that he could do that changed my life from dark, depressed, and going nowhere to having a life of joy is that he showed up. That's what he did. He showed up. And this week, we have an opportunity for you on Wednesday to show up, to make a difference in somebody's life just like somebody made a difference in me. And I could argue with him every day, and to this day, he is one of my best friends. And he will argue with you and tell you that I impacted his life more than he's ever impacted my life. And that's because he showed up. Would some of you do the same thing this week and show up and make a difference?
Thanks, Timmy. Thanks for sharing that with us. True change happens through relationship. That's how it happens. It happens when we step out of ourselves and step into the life of another. Today, as you leave, I want to challenge you. We've got a bunch of people that have signed up for this. It's a big thing that's happening in our church. You just go right out there, you take that little card, you fill it out, you go straight out there to the left to Fix It Felix's house. We'll get you signed up. We'll see you this week, and firmly believing that God will do something powerful through this church. Speaking of showing up, did you see what showed up in the New York Times this week?